The stars stretched endlessly before the viewing screen of the eternal horizon. Captain Taman Park stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the ancient space station drift through the void like a corpse. It had been abandoned for centuries, its metal hull scarred and twisted by time and cosmic radiation. "Are we sure this is safe?" Hye-Jin Kim asked from her position at the engineering console. Her fingers moved across the holographic controls, checking their ship's systems for the third time in 10 minutes. Taman smiled slightly. "When has anything we do been completely safe?" Hye-Jin shot him a look that made him chuckle. They had been friends for 15 years, ever since the academy. She knew him well enough to know when he was being reckless and when he was being calculated. This time, he was being both. The space station had appeared on their long-range scanners 3 days ago. According to galactic records, it didn't exist. That alone made it worth investigating. Humanity had learned early that the other species in the galaxy liked to hide things. Important things, dangerous things, things that might upset the careful balance of power they had maintained for thousands of years. "Taking us in," announced Ji-Won-Oh from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved with practiced ease, guiding their ship toward the station's docking bay. The bay doors hung open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Taman used the time to pull on his environmental suit and check his equipment. Hye-Jin did the same, muttering complaints about the suit's poor design. Ji-Won would stay with the ship, ready to pull them out if anything went wrong. The station's interior was dark and cold. Their helmet lights cut through the blackness, revealing corridors covered in frost and dust. The air had leaked out long ago, leaving behind only vacuum and silence. "I'm picking up a power signature," Hye-Jin said, studying her handheld scanner. "Deep in the station's core, something is still running down there." They moved carefully through the corridors, their magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. Taman had explored dozens of abandoned stations in his career, but something about this one felt different. Wrong. Like they were walking through a tomb that had secrets it wanted to keep buried. It took them an hour to reach the core. The door was sealed, but Hye-Jin's tools made quick work of the ancient locking mechanism. Inside, they found a room full of data storage units, all connected to a single computer terminal that glowed with faint blue light. "It's been waiting," Hye-Jin whispered. "All these years, just waiting for someone to find it." Taman approached the terminal carefully. The screen displayed text in a language he didn't recognize, but his suit's translator began working immediately. Words appeared on his helmet's display, translating the alien script into simple Korean. "This is a record keeper," he read aloud. "Property of the Torvallen Collective. Last entry dated 800 years ago." "Torvallen?" Hye-Jin moved closer, her own translator processing the information. "I've never heard of them." "Neither have I." Taman began accessing the files, downloading them to his suit's storage. "But something tells me we're about to learn a lot." The data was extensive. It took hours to sort through, and what they found made Taman's blood run cold. The Torvallen had been an advanced species, peaceful and technologically sophisticated. 800 years ago, they had discovered a small human colony at the edge of space, struggling to survive after their colony ship had malfunctioned. The colony would have died. All 2,000 humans gone without a trace. But the Torvallen had helped them. They had provided food, medicine, technology. They had saved every single life. In return, the colonists had made a promise. A contract signed by the colony's leaders and witnessed by the Torvallen elders. The terms were simple. When the time comes, humanity will return this kindness. We will help the Torvallen when they need us most. "This is incredible," Hye-Jin breathed. "Our people made a deal with an alien species 800 years ago, and we never knew about it." But that wasn't the worst part. The files continued, showing what had happened to the Torvalin after that. They had been targeted by the galaxy's ruling powers, accused of sharing too much technology with younger species, accused of disrupting the natural order. The Velmara Collective, the Crothian Empire, the settlers of Anara, all the great civilizations that now dominated the Galactic Council, had banded together to eliminate the Torvalin threat. It had been called pest control, the extermination of a species that didn't know its place. The files showed prison worlds, hidden at the edge of known space. The last surviving Torvalin, kept alive for study, for experimentation. The galaxy had decided that genocide was acceptable as long as it was done quietly. "We need to take this to the Council," Hyejin said. Her voice shook with barely controlled anger. "The galaxy needs to know what happened." Taman nodded, though part of him already knew how that conversation would go. The Council didn't like to be embarrassed. They didn't like to admit mistakes. And they certainly didn't like when humanity asked uncomfortable questions. They returned to the eternal horizon and began the long journey back to Earth. Taman sent encrypted messages ahead, warning the human government about what they had found. By the time they arrived, the entire diplomatic corps was already preparing for the storm. Minho Choi met them at the landing pad. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many failed negotiations. As head of Human Diplomatic Corps, it was his job to navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics. "You've certainly made things interesting," he said, reviewing the data on his tablet. "The Council is already threatening us. They say if we pursue this matter, there will be consequences." Consequences? Taman felt anger burning in his chest. "They committed genocide and they're threatening us?" "They don't see it as genocide," Minho replied calmly. "They see it as maintaining order. The Torvalin broke the rules by helping younger species too much. By their logic, the punishment was justified." "And the survivors? The ones being held in prison?" "Officially, there are no survivors. The Torvalin are extinct." Minho paused, looking up at Taman with serious eyes. "If we push this, we'll be standing alone. No other species will support us. We'll be painting a target on our backs." Ambassador Yuna Lee arrived the next day. She was scheduled to address the Galactic Council within the week. Taman met with her privately, explaining everything they had found. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing harder with each detail. "They'll try to silence us," she said finally. "The Council doesn't like reminders of their past sins." "What will you do?" Yuna smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "I'm going to tell them the truth, and then I'm going to give them a choice." The Council meeting took place on the neutral station orbiting the planet Velmora. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Great Chamber, a massive hall designed to remind everyone just how small and insignificant they were. Yuna presented the evidence calmly and professionally. She showed the contract, the records of the Torvalin's help, and the proof of their systematic destruction. She showed the coordinates of the prison worlds where survivors were still held. The reaction was immediate and hostile. High Arbiter Velmos, leader of the Velmara Collective, stood and pointed an accusing finger at Yuna. "You dare bring these ancient matters before this council? What happened to the Torvalin was justified. They threatened the stability of our galaxy." "They saved our people," Yuna replied quietly. 2,000 humans lived because of their kindness, and we made a promise to repay that debt. The debt is void. The Torvalin are extinct." "No," Yuna said. "They're not. You've kept them alive, hidden away where no one could see. You've kept them as prisoners for 800 years. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species shouted over each other, accusing humanity of causing trouble, of stirring up problems that had been settled long ago. The council was chaos. Yuna waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke again, her voice carried across the entire chamber. Humanity is withdrawing from active council participation. We will be pursuing this matter independently. We will find the surviving Torvallen, and we will free them. We will honor the contract our ancestors made, because that is what humans do. She paused, looking directly at Velmos. Humanity always pays its debts. The council laughed. Some species mocked openly, reminding everyone how weak humanity was, how they barely had a military worth mentioning. Earth was a minor player in galactic politics, barely worth acknowledging. But Taman, watching from the observation deck, didn't laugh. He knew something the council didn't. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for 200 years. They had been watching, learning, and building in secret. The galaxy was about to discover that underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. The vote was unanimous. The council rejected humanity's request and threatened sanctions if they continued. Yuna left the chamber with her head held high. The message went out across all human systems that night. We have a debt to pay. Prepare for war. The military base on Luna was busier than it had been in decades. Admiral Daeho Sung walked through the command center, watching officers rush between stations while holographic displays showed ship movements across the solar system. Every human vessel was being recalled, every soldier activated. The galaxy had laughed at their declaration of war, but humanity was deadly serious. How long until the fleet is ready? Daeho asked his second-in-command. 72 hours, sir. We're bringing ships out of storage and activating crews that have been on standby for years. Daeho nodded. The plan had been in place since humanity first joined the Galactic Council. They had seen how the other species treated newcomers, had watched smaller civilizations be pushed around and threatened. The human government had made a decision then. Never again would they be helpless. Never again would they rely on others for protection. For 200 years, humanity had built ships in secret, massive shipyards hidden in the outer solar system, disguised as mining operations. Weapons research facilities on isolated moons listed in official records as scientific stations. Every credit they could spare had gone into this preparation, all while presenting a face of peaceful cooperation to the galaxy. Dr. Sunmi Kang was working in her laboratory when the call came. She was a xenobiologist, one of the few humans who specialized in studying extinct alien species. The Torvallen had been a subject of her research for years, though most of her colleagues thought she was wasting her time studying beings that no longer existed. Now her research mattered more than ever. You need to see this, her assistant said, bringing up files on the main display. They were the records from the ancient station, the ones Taman had recovered. Sunmi spent 3 days going through every document, every technical schematic, every biological record. What she found made her realize the truth. The Torvallen hadn't just saved that human colony. They had given humanity a gift, one that had been hidden and forgotten. The colonists had been taught advanced medical techniques, engineering principles, and scientific methods far beyond what humanity possessed at the time. But the knowledge had been carefully disguised, integrated into their records as if humans had discovered it themselves. The Torvallen had known what would happen if the galactic powers learned they were sharing technology with younger species. They were protecting us even as they helped us, Sunmi whispered. They knew the galaxy would come for them, so they made sure we wouldn't be implicated. She compiled her findings into a report and sent it directly to the military command. Within hours, she was on a shuttle to Luna, called to brief the admiral personally. Daeho listened to her presentation with growing understanding. So the technological jumps humanity made in the years after that colony was saved, they weren't jumps at all. They were gifts from the Torvallen, disguised to look like our own discoveries. Exactly. And there's more. Sunmi brought up another file. The Torvallen left detailed records of their own technology, locked in data vaults scattered across the colony ships. I think they wanted us to find them eventually when we were ready, when we needed them. Can we access these vaults? I believe so, but we'll need to act quickly. If the Council realizes what we're searching for, they'll try to destroy the evidence. Jaewon Nam had been waiting for this moment his entire career. As an intelligence operative, he had spent 20 years infiltrating alien networks, gathering secrets, and preparing for the day when humanity would need to act decisively. He was a ghost in the galactic information networks, unseen and unknown. Now he had a mission: find the prison worlds where the Torvalan survivors were being held. It took him 5 days of careful searching through encrypted databases and classified files. The Velmara had tried to hide the locations, but they had made one critical mistake. They had been keeping the Torvalan alive for so long that eventually someone had to document where the prisons were. Bureaucracy always left a trail. Jaewon found 12 locations, remote worlds at the edge of explored space, places where no one would accidentally stumble upon them. Each prison held between a few dozen and a few hundred Torvalan, kept in stasis or in controlled environments. Living specimens for study, evidence of crimes that could never be revealed. He sent his findings to military command with a simple message: targets acquired, ready to proceed. The galaxy continued to mock humanity's declaration of war. News broadcasts on alien worlds showed human ships mustering, and the commentators laughed. Humans were weak, they said. Humans had barely defended themselves in past conflicts. This would be over quickly, and humanity would learn its place. Councillor Hyunwoo Baek was one of the few voices urging caution within the human government. He stood before the War Council, pleading for a diplomatic solution. "We're risking everything," he said. "Our entire civilization could be destroyed. Is this debt really worth it?" Minyo Choi, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. 800 years ago, 2,000 humans would have died. Children, families, people with hopes and dreams. The Torvalan saved them all, asking only that we remember, that we help them if they ever needed us. He paused, looking around the room. If we abandon that promise now, what does that make us? What kind of civilization are we building if we only keep our word when it's convenient? The vote was taken. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would honor the debt, regardless of the cost. Admiral Daeho stood on the bridge of the flagship, indomitable, watching as ships began emerging from their hidden positions throughout the solar system. Battleships and carriers, cruisers and destroyers, all built in secret over 2 centuries. Humanity had learned from every conflict they had witnessed, studied every tactic and strategy used by the galactic powers. They had built ships designed not to match alien vessels, but to counter them. Every weakness in Velmara shields, every blind spot in Crothian sensors, every tactical pattern used by the Council's forces, all of it had been analyzed and accounted for. "Activate Protocol Valkyrie," Daeho ordered. The command went out across all human networks. Hidden shipyards revealed themselves, massive structures that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen humanity build before. Ships poured out by the hundreds, their hulls gleaming with new armor, their weapons charged and ready. The galaxy stopped laughing. Ambassador Yuna received the emergency transmission from the Velmara Collective within the hour. High Arbiter Velmos demanded an explanation. Where had these ships come from? How had humanity built such a fleet without anyone knowing? Yuna's response was broadcast on open channels, ensuring every species in the galaxy could hear it. "You taught us the galaxy was dangerous. You showed us that power was the only language you understood. You threatened us, belittled us, and dismissed us as insignificant. We learned the lesson well. We learned to be ready." The Velmara issued an ultimatum. "Stand down immediately or face annihilation." Humanity had 24 hours to comply. Daiho's response came in the form of action. Human ships began moving into formation, taking positions at strategic points throughout human space. They weren't running, they weren't hiding, they were preparing to strike. Taemin and Hyejin were given command of a strike team. Their mission was simple but dangerous. Reach one of the prison worlds and extract the Torvalin survivors before the Velmara could execute them. Intelligence suggested that once the war started, the prison worlds would be destroyed to eliminate evidence. "We launch in 6 hours," Taemin told his crew. "This will be dangerous. The Velmara won't let us take those prisoners without a fight." Jiwon checked her flight controls one more time. "Let them try to stop us. I've been flying simulations of their defense patterns for 5 years. I know their ships better than they do." The 24-hour deadline passed. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would back down. They had to. No rational species would fight a war they couldn't win. But humanity had never been entirely rational when it came to keeping promises. The first shots were fired at the edge of the Kronos sector. A Velmara patrol fleet encountered a human battle group and demanded they retreat. The human commander, Captain Yoonji Han, responded with weapons fire. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the Velmara fleet was scattered, their ships damaged or destroyed. The human battle group had taken casualties, but they held the field. News of the battle spread across the galaxy in hours. The impossible had happened. Humans had won a direct military engagement against one of the great powers. Species that had been mocking humanity suddenly went quiet, reassessing everything they thought they knew. Admiral Daiho addressed the human fleet from his flagship. "Today we proved that we can fight. Tomorrow we prove that we fight for something worth fighting for. All teams, execute your missions. Bring our people home." Across the galaxy, human ships moved toward the prison worlds. 12 targets, 12 rescue missions. The war had begun, and humanity had no intention of stopping until every single Torvalin survivor was free. The Velmara Collective called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. They demanded that other species join them in crushing the human rebellion. But many species hesitated. If humans could defeat Velmara ships, what did that mean for everyone else? If humanity was willing to go to war over an 800-year-old promise, what did that say about their determination? Fear began to spread through the galaxy. Not fear of human military might, though that was now proven. Fear of what humans represented. A species that would risk everything for a promise made centuries ago. A species that couldn't be bought, threatened, or dismissed. A species that paid its debts regardless of the cost. In the depths of space, Taemin's ship approached the first prison world. Sensors showed heavy defenses, automated systems designed to destroy any rescue attempt. But they also showed life signs. Torvalin survivors still alive after 800 years of captivity. "All hands, prepare for combat," Taemin ordered. "We're going in." The prison world designated Target 7 hung in space like a dark jewel. Its surface was covered in ice and frozen methane. The perfect place to hide something the galaxy wanted to forget. Deep underground, in facilities shielded from sensors and protected by automated defense systems, the Torvalin survivors waited in their cells. Captain Yoonji Han studied the tactical display on her ship's bridge. She commanded the strike team called Ghost Protocol, 12 fast attack ships designed for exactly this kind of mission. They had trained for years, running simulations of rescue operations against overwhelming odds. Now, it was real. "Defense grid is active," her tactical officer reported, counting 40 automated turrets, shield generators at 6 locations, and 3 defense satellites in orbit. "Can we slip past them?" Yoonji asked. "Not a chance. The moment we enter orbit, they'll know we're here." Yoonji smiled. "Then let's make sure they know we're here. All ships, attack pattern Delta. We're going in loud." Ghost Protocol dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system and accelerated toward the prison world at maximum speed. The defense satellites detected them immediately, sending targeting data to the automated turrets on the surface. Weapons fire lit up the space around them, but the human ships moved like they were dancing. Ji-Won, flying the lead ship, performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. She rolled and twisted through the defensive fire, her ship's advanced engines allowing movements that would tear apart any standard vessel. The other pilots followed her lead, each one pushing their ships to the limit. "Target the satellites first," Yoonji ordered. "Clear us a path to the surface." Missiles streaked from the human ships, sophisticated weapons that adapted their approach to avoid countermeasures. 2 satellites exploded in the first volley. The third tried to retreat, but Ji-Won was already on it, her weapons systems locked and firing. The satellite became debris. The orbital defenses cleared, Ghost Protocol descended toward the surface. The ground-based turrets opened fire, filling the sky with energy bolts and explosive rounds. 3 human ships took damage, their shields flaring under the assault, but they pressed on. "Landing zone secured," Yoonji announced as her ship touched down. "All teams deploy." Soldiers in powered armor poured from the ships, moving with practiced efficiency toward the facility entrance. The Velmara had built this prison to be secure against external threats. But they had never imagined someone would actually try to break in. The defenses were impressive, but predictable. Hyejin worked on the main door, her engineering tools cutting through the locks, while soldiers provided cover fire against the automated defenses. "This is going to take a few minutes," she called out. "These systems are old, but well-maintained." "Take the time you need," Yoonji replied, watching her tactical display. "We have company incoming, Velmara response fleet, estimated arrival in 20 minutes. Then we better be gone in 15. The door finally opened with a groan of metal. The interior of the facility was dark and cold, lit only by emergency lighting that had been running for centuries. The team moved inside, weapons ready, but they encountered no resistance. The prison was fully automated, designed to run without any personnel on site. They found the Torvalen in the lower levels, held in stasis chambers that preserved their bodies in suspended animation. There were 63 of them, beings that looked almost human but with subtle differences. Their skin had a faint blue tint, and their eyes were larger, adapted for lower light conditions. They had been sleeping for 800 years, prisoners of a crime they didn't commit. "Start revival procedures," Yoonji ordered. "We're taking all of them." Dr. Sunmi Kang, who had accompanied the mission, worked quickly to wake the Torvalen. The process was delicate. Their bodies had been in stasis for so long that bringing them back too quickly could be fatal. But she had studied the technology, understood how it worked. The first Torvalen opened their eyes and saw Sunmi standing over them. Confusion crossed their face, then recognition as their translator implant activated, and they understood her words. "You're safe now," Sunmi said gently. "We're humans. We've come to take you home." The Torvalen tried to speak, but their voice was weak from centuries of sleep. Sunmi helped them sit up, providing water and basic medical care. Around them, the rest of the Torvalen were waking, each one processing the reality of their rescue. "Velmara ships entering orbit," a soldier called out. "We need to move now." Getting 63 barely conscious Torvalen back to the ships was chaotic. But the human soldiers managed it with determination and care. They carried those too weak to walk, supported those who could manage a few steps, and protected them all from the automated defenses that were still trying to eliminate the intruders. Ji-Won provided air cover as the teams loaded the survivors onto the transport ships. She engaged the Velmara fighters that came screaming down from orbit, using every trick she knew to keep them away from the landing zone. Her ship took multiple hits, shields failing and armor scarred, but she didn't retreat. "Last transport is loaded," Yoonji reported. All ships, prepare for immediate departure. They lifted off just as the main Velmara force arrived. Enemy cruisers moved to block their escape, weapons charging. It should have been the end of the mission, the rescue team trapped and destroyed. But Admiral Deho had anticipated this. A full human battle fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge, dozens of warships appearing as if from nowhere. They moved to intercept the Velmara forces, weapons firing in a coordinated barrage that forced the enemy to scatter. "This is Admiral Sung to Ghost Protocol." Deho's voice came over the communication channel. "You have your people. Get them out of here. We'll handle the welcome party." The Battle of Kronos Gate, as it would later be known, became legendary. Human ships fought with a ferocity and precision that shocked the galaxy. They used tactics no one had seen before, attacking from unexpected angles and exploiting weaknesses the Velmara didn't even know they had. Seojin Park, Taemin's younger brother and a tactical officer on one of the battleships, coordinated the fighter squadrons with brilliant efficiency. He had studied every battle the Velmara had ever fought, analyzed every tactic they favored, and he knew exactly how they would respond to each human maneuver. "They're moving to surround us," Seojin reported to his captain. "Predictable. Execute countermeasure 7. The human ships suddenly changed formation, spreading out in a pattern that put the Velmara vessels in each other's firing lines. The enemy had to break their attack to avoid hitting their own ships, and in that moment of confusion, the humans struck hard. A Velmara dreadnought, a massive vessel that had been the pride of their fleet, found itself isolated and surrounded. Jiwon led a squadron of fighters in an attack run that targeted the ship's main reactor. The strikes were precise, each pilot hitting exact points on the hull that intelligence had identified as weak spots. The dreadnought tried to defend itself, but human weapons were designed specifically to pierce Velmara shields. Missiles found their marks, fighters darted in and out too fast for the defensive turrets to track, and within minutes the great ship's reactor was failing. The dreadnought exploded, a brief new sun in the darkness of space. The Velmara fleet, seeing their most powerful vessel destroyed, began to retreat. The human ships let them go, their mission accomplished. Ghost Protocol escaped with all 63 Torvalan survivors. Across the galaxy, 11 other rescue teams were reporting similar successes. Not every mission went perfectly. Some teams took heavy casualties, and 2 ships were lost with all hands. But by the end of the first week of war, humanity had freed over 800 Torvalan from their prisons. The survivors were brought to Earth, to special facilities where they could recover and adjust to freedom. Boram Hwang was one of the first to fully regain his strength. He had been a scientist among the Torvalan, imprisoned for the crime of sharing knowledge with younger species. Minho Choi met with him privately, wanting to understand what the Torvalan had experienced and what they knew about the galaxy's history. "Your people risked everything to save us," Minho said. "Why?" Boram looked at him with eyes that held centuries of sorrow and wisdom. "Because we saw in you what we once were, young, hopeful, eager to learn and grow. The galaxy tried to crush that spirit in us, and they succeeded. But we made sure they wouldn't succeed with you. The technology you gave our colonists, it helped us survive. It was more than survival tools. We gave you the foundation for rapid advancement. We knew that someday you would need to stand on your own. We had hoped it would not come to war, but we prepared you for that possibility. Do you have more knowledge, more technology that could help us?" Boram smiled sadly. "We have everything. All of our research, our discoveries, our advanced sciences. Before we were captured, we hid our data vaults in places only humans could find. We gambled everything on you becoming strong enough to search for us, wise enough to honor your promises, and brave enough to face the galaxy's wrath." He paused. "We chose well." The Velmara Collective was in chaos. They had lost battles they should have won easily. Human ships were appearing throughout their territory. striking at military installations and rescue mission targets before vanishing. Every attempt to corner the human fleet ended in failure or defeat. High Arbiter Velmos called for a full mobilization of all Velmara forces. He contacted other galactic powers, demanding they join the war against humanity. Some agreed, seeing the human uprising as a threat to their own authority. Others hesitated, watching and waiting to see how the conflict would develop. On Earth, Minister Suyong Lim addressed the human population in a speech that was broadcast across all inhabited worlds. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of absolute conviction. The galaxy has asked us to abandon the Torvalin, to forget our promises and accept that some lives matter less than others. We have refused. She paused, looking directly into the camera. 800 years ago, the Torvalin saved 2,000 human lives. They asked only that we remember and help them if they ever needed us. Today, they need us, and we will not fail them. She continued. The galactic powers have demanded we stop our rescue operations. They have threatened to destroy Earth, to eliminate humanity as they eliminated the Torvalin. Let me be clear. We will not stop. We will free every Torvalin prisoner, no matter how many fleets they send against us. When you exterminated the Torvalin for the crime of kindness, you made this debt personal. There will be no negotiation until every last survivor is free. The broadcast ended with a simple image. The symbol of the Torvalin Collective and the flag of Earth, side by side. The galaxy trembled. Species that had been comfortable in their power for thousands of years suddenly faced an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, bought off, or frightened into submission. Humanity fought not for territory or resources, but for honor, for a promise made before any living human had been born, and they were winning. The war spread like fire across the galaxy. What had started as humanity's mission to rescue the Torvalin became something larger, something that threatened the foundations of galactic power. Species that had remained neutral began choosing sides, and battle lines were drawn across hundreds of star systems. Commander Minji Shin stood guard outside the diplomatic chamber where human and Torvalin representatives were meeting. As leader of diplomatic security forces, it was her job to protect these meetings from both physical threats and espionage. The galaxy had tried 3 times already to assassinate the rescued Torvalin survivors. Each attempt had failed, but Minji knew more would come. Inside the chamber, Borum Huang was sharing knowledge that the galaxy had tried to bury for 8 centuries. He stood before a holographic display showing the locations of hidden Torvalin data vaults scattered across space. When we realized the galactic powers were coming for us, we preserved everything, Borum explained. Our technology, our history, our discoveries. We hid it in places we knew only a spacefaring humanity would eventually explore. Asteroid fields in your solar system, derelict ships in your exploration routes, even on some of your own colony worlds. Hyejin listened with growing amazement. You've been guiding us for 800 years, and we never knew. We could not be obvious. If the Velmara or the others had suspected, they would have destroyed the vaults. So we were subtle. A clue here, a hint there, nudging human exploration in the right directions. What kind of technology are we talking about? Asked High General Tae-hyun Lee, Supreme Commander of Human Military Forces. Borum's expression grew serious. Weapons capable of destroying planets. Ships that can travel across the galaxy in hours instead of weeks. Medical science that can cure any disease and extend life indefinitely. Energy generation that could power entire civilizations without exhausting resources. He paused. The kind of technology that made the galactic powers afraid of us. And you're willing to share all of this with humanity? Tae-hyun asked. You freed us from 800 years of captivity. You went to war for us when you could have ignored our existence. You honored a promise your ancestors made when doing so might cost you everything. Borum smiled. Yes, General, We will share everything. You have more than earned it. The implications were staggering. With Torvalan technology, humanity could leap forward centuries in advancement. They could become a true galactic power, not just a minor player, but a civilization that could stand equal to the ancient species that had dominated for so long. But first, they had to survive the war. Admiral Deho reviewed the tactical situation from his flagship. The Velmara had gathered a massive fleet, pulling ships from across their territory for a decisive strike. Intelligence suggested they planned to attack the Sol system directly, to eliminate Earth and send a message to any species considering rebellion against the established order. "How many ships are we looking at?" Deho asked his tactical officer. "Over 300 capital ships, General, plus fighters and support vessels. It's the largest fleet the Velmara have assembled in 500 years. Deho studied the projections, calculating odds and outcomes. The human defense fleet was strong, but they were still outnumbered. "Send word to all commanders. We're pulling back to defend Earth. Every ship, every fighter, every weapon we have, this is where we make our stand." The order went out across all human forces. Ships that had been conducting raids deep in enemy territory began the long journey home. Rescue missions were completed or abandoned, everything focused on the coming battle for humanity's homeworld. Taman received the recall order while his team was preparing to strike at another prison world. He looked at the coordinates, confirmed they were genuine, and felt his stomach tighten. The Velmara were coming for Earth, for his home. "Change of plans," he told his crew. "We're going home, maximum speed." Senator Kyungmi Yoon addressed the human government in emergency session. She had been one of the voices pushing for a measured response, for diplomacy over war. Now, with an enemy fleet approaching their homeworld, she stood before her colleagues with a different message. "I argued for peace," she said quietly. "I believed we could find a diplomatic solution. I was wrong." She looked around the chamber. "The Velmara are not interested in peace. They are interested in obedience. They want us to submit, to accept that some species have rights and others do not. They want us to forget our promises and our honor." Her voice grew stronger. "I say we show them what humanity is made of. We stand and fight, not just for ourselves, but for the Torvalan, for the principle that a promise made is a promise kept, regardless of the cost." The vote was unanimous. Earth would be defended to the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath. The Velmara fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system 2 weeks later. They came with overwhelming force, confident that humanity would see the futility of resistance and surrender. High Arbiter Velmos himself commanded the fleet from his flagship, determined to personally oversee humanity's punishment. "Send the ultimatum," he ordered. "Humanity has 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we destroy Earth and all human colonies." The message was received on Earth and forwarded immediately to Admiral Deho. He read it once, then deleted it without responding. Words were meaningless now. Only actions would determine the future. The human defense fleet positioned itself between the Velmara Armada and Earth. It was the largest gathering of human military might in history. Every ship they had built over 2 centuries, every weapon they had developed in secret. It was still not enough to match the Velmara numbers, but humanity had never relied solely on numbers. "All ships," Deho broadcast across the fleet. "Today we fight not for territory or resources, but for our very existence. The enemy believes we are weak, that we will break under pressure. Show them they are wrong. Show them that humanity does not surrender." The hour passed. The Velmara fleet began moving forward, weapons systems charging. They came in a standard attack formation, massive capital ships in the center, fighters and support vessels on the flanks. It was a formation they had used successfully for thousands of years. Hyejin, monitoring the battle from the command center on Luna, saw the enemy formation and smiled grimly. "They haven't learned anything." They still think this is a normal war. She was right. The Velmara expected humanity to meet them head-on in traditional battle formations. Instead, the human ships scattered, breaking into dozens of smaller groups that moved independently. They didn't try to match the enemy formation, they attacked it from every angle simultaneously. Seojin coordinated the chaos from his position on one of the battleships. His tactical displays showed hundreds of ships moving in patterns that looked random, but were actually carefully orchestrated. Every group knew exactly where to strike and when, creating a web of attacks that the Velmara couldn't counter effectively. "Target their command ships," Seojin ordered. "Make them fight blind." Human missiles and fighters focused on the vessels coordinating the Velmara fleet. These ships had powerful defenses, but they weren't designed to handle the concentrated firepower humanity brought to bear. One by one, the command ships were damaged or destroyed, and the Velmara fleet's coordination began to fall apart. The battle raged for hours, space around Earth filled with debris and weapons fire, ships exploding and fighters darting through the chaos. Human forces took heavy losses, but they fought with desperate determination. Every ship that fell took enemy vessels with it. Every soldier knew that if they failed, Earth would burn. Velmos watched from his flagship as the battle turned against him. How was this possible? Humanity was supposed to be weak, easy to defeat. Yet they were fighting like demons, using tactics that defied conventional warfare. His fleet was larger, more powerful, and yet they were losing. "All ships converge on their command vessel," Velmos ordered, pointing at Admiral Daeho's flagship. "If we kill their leader, they will collapse." It was the wrong decision. The Velmara fleet bunched together, trying to mass firepower against a single target. In doing so, they exposed themselves to exactly the kind of attack humanity had been planning for. Hidden among the asteroids of the outer system, a second human fleet had been waiting. They were the reserve force, fresh ships with full weapons and shields. At a signal from Daeho, they struck. The Velmara rearguard was destroyed in minutes. The enemy fleet found itself trapped between two human forces, taking fire from all directions. Ships collided as they tried to maneuver in the chaos. The careful discipline that had made the Velmara a galactic power crumbled under the assault. "They're breaking," Seojin reported, hardly believing what his sensors showed. "The enemy fleet is retreating." But Velmos had one final card to play. Seeing his fleet defeated, he ordered his flagship to make a direct run at Earth. If he couldn't defeat humanity militarily, he would eliminate their homeworld and make the victory meaningless. "Charging the planet killer weapon," his weapons officer reported. "Target locked on Earth." Taemin saw the flagship's trajectory and understood immediately what was happening. His ship, the Eternal Horizon, was in position to intercept, but they would never destroy a vessel that large before it fired its weapon. "Seojun," Taemin said over the communication channel, speaking to his brother on the battleship. "Tell Mom and Dad I'm sorry." Before anyone could respond, Taemin set his ship on a collision course with the Velmara flagship. At maximum speed, loaded with weapons and fuel, the Eternal Horizon became a missile aimed at the enemy's heart. "Captain, what are you doing?" Hyejin shouted from the engineering station. "Saving Earth! Get to the escape pods! All of you now! That's an order!" Hyejin understood. They all did. The crew abandoned ship, pods launching as the Eternal Horizon raced toward its target. Taemin stayed at the controls, making sure the trajectory was perfect, that there was no chance of missing. The flagship's weapons officer saw the incoming ship and tried to shoot it down, but Taemin flew with the same skill that had made him a legendary pilot. He dodged and weaved through defensive fire, his ship taking hits, but holding together through determination and engineering that Hyejin had perfected over years of work. The Eternal Horizon struck the flagship directly above its planet-killer weapon. The explosion was massive, tearing through both ships in a flash of nuclear fire. The weapon, already charging, detonated in the blast, taking the rest of the flagship with it. High Arbiter Velmos died instantly, along with thousands of his crew. The weapon that would have destroyed Earth was gone, and so was Taman Park. The remaining Velmara fleet, seeing their leader dead and their mission failed, retreated from the Sol system. They had come to crush humanity, and instead had been crushed themselves. Over half their fleet was destroyed or crippled, and their most powerful weapon was gone. Earth was saved, but the cost had been terrible. Thousands of human ships destroyed, tens of thousands of soldiers dead. And among the fallen was one of humanity's best captains, a man who had started this entire conflict by discovering the truth about the Torvalin. Seojun Park stood on the bridge of his battleship, staring at the empty space where his brother's ship had been, and wept. The funeral services lasted for 3 days. All across human space, people gathered to mourn the fallen. Memorial ceremonies were held on Earth, on Luna, on Mars, and on every colony world humanity had established. They remembered the ships that would never return home, the soldiers who had given everything, and the captain who had saved their world with his final act. Hyejin stood at the memorial wall on Luna, staring at Taman's name carved among thousands of others. She had escaped the eternal horizon with the rest of the crew, watching from her escape pod as her captain and friend flew to his death. Part of her wanted to be angry with him for not evacuating, for choosing sacrifice over survival, but she understood why he had done it. Some things were worth dying for. "He would have made a terrible speech at this memorial," she said quietly. "He always got emotional at these things." Jiwon stood beside her, tears running down her face. "He got emotional at everything. Remember when we graduated from the academy? He cried like a baby. He was a good man, a good captain." Hyejin placed her hand on the wall, touching his name. "He saved us all." The war continued, but something had changed. The Battle of Sol had proven that humanity could defeat even the mightiest galactic powers when pushed to their limit. Other species began to question whether the Velmara and their allies were truly invincible. If humans could win such a battle, what did that mean for the galaxy's power structure? The rescue missions continued. Every day brought news of more Torvalin freed from hidden prisons. The number grew from hundreds to thousands as human teams found facilities that intelligence hadn't even known existed. The Velmara had been thorough in their genocide, but they had also been unable to completely eliminate the Torvalin. Some small part of them must have wanted to preserve the species they were destroying, if only as specimens for study. 3 months after the Battle of Sol, humanity freed the last known Torvalin prisoner. The final count was 3,847 survivors, scattered across 23 prison worlds. Each one was brought to Earth or to designated sanctuary stations, where they could recover and reunite with others of their kind. Boram Huang organized the survivors, helping them adjust to a galaxy that had changed dramatically in 800 years. Many were confused, traumatized by their imprisonment. Some had been kept in stasis the entire time and woke to find their entire civilization gone. Others had been awake for decades or even centuries, trapped in cells with nothing but their memories and regrets. "We were dead," one survivor told Boram. "The galaxy killed us, erased us from history. How do we come back from that?" "We don't come back," Boram replied gently. "We start fresh, with new friends, new hope, and a galaxy that will never forget us again. Because humans won't let them forget." The Velmara collective was in chaos. They had lost their High Arbiter, half their fleet, and their reputation as an invincible power. Other species that had supported them began withdrawing, unwilling to continue a war that seemed unwinnable. The Crothian Empire publicly announced they would seek peace with humanity. The settlers of Anara followed suit days later. General Taehyun Lee stood before the War Council, presenting options for the next phase of operations. We can push forward, take the war directly to Velmora Prime. With our current forces and Torvalan technology, we could probably break through their defenses." He paused, looking around the room. "Or we can offer peace. We've freed all known Torvalan survivors. We've proven our point. We can end this war with humanity's honor intact and our objectives achieved." "What about justice?" someone asked. "The Velmara committed genocide. Should they face no consequences?" Minho Choi, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "Justice and vengeance are not the same thing. The Torvalan are free. The galaxy knows what the Velmara did. Continuing the war now would make us conquerors, not liberators. Is that who we want to be?" The debate lasted hours. Arguments were made for both options, each side presenting valid points. Finally, a vote was taken. By a narrow margin, humanity chose peace. Ambassador Una Lee was sent to negotiate the terms. She met with the new Velmara leadership on a neutral station, accompanied by Boram as a representative of the Torvalan people. The Velmara delegates entered the room expecting to see anger, demands for punishment, perhaps even calls for their own destruction. Instead, Una presented a simple list of terms. The Velmara would formally acknowledge the genocide of the Torvalan people. They would pay reparations to help rebuild Torvalan society. They would surrender all records and data related to the imprisoned Torvalan, and most importantly, they would support a complete restructuring of the Galactic Council to prevent such atrocities from happening again. "You could destroy us," the Velmara representative said quietly. "You've proven you have the power. Why offer peace?" Una looked at him steadily. "Because we came to the stars hoping to find friends. You treated us as lesser beings, threatened us, dismissed us. But when we found the Torvalan, when we discovered those who needed help, we remembered what it means to be human. We fight when we must, but we prefer to build, to help, to create rather than destroy." She leaned forward. "You taught us that the galaxy was dangerous, but we choose to make it better, not to become another threat within it." The Velmara accepted the terms. Within weeks, other galactic powers followed. The Galactic Council was reformed, with new rules protecting younger species and preventing the kind of systematic oppression that had destroyed the Torvalan. Humanity and the Torvalan became founding members of this new order, their voices carrying weight that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. The galaxy had learned a simple lesson. Underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake, not because of their weapons or their military might, but because of their determination to honor their promises and protect those who needed protection. 6 months after the war ended, a ceremony was held on Earth. The Torvalan survivors gathered with human dignitaries and representatives from across the galaxy. It was a memorial service, honoring both the Torvalan who had died during the genocide and the humans who had fallen during the rescue missions. Dasom Kwan was the oldest living Torvalan, one of the few who had been alive during the original contact with humanity 800 years ago. She was ancient by any measure, her body kept alive by technology that even the Torvalan themselves barely understood anymore. She had asked to speak at the ceremony, and no one could refuse her. She stood slowly, supported by younger Torvalan, and looked out at the gathered crowd. When she spoke, her voice was weak but clear, carried by speakers to every corner of the gathering. 800 years ago, my people discovered a human colony dying in space. We saved them because it was the right thing to do. We asked only that they remember that if our people ever needed help, they would answer. She paused, tears running down her aged face. The galaxy tried to erase us. They nearly succeeded. We were broken, imprisoned, forgotten by everyone except ourselves. Her voice grew stronger. But humanity remembered. When the time came, they risked everything to honor a promise made by their ancestors. They went to war for us. They died for us. She turned to look at a memorial statue that had been erected for the occasion. It showed Taman Park at the helm of his ship, forever captured in the moment before his sacrifice. This man saved Earth. He saved the Torvallan homeworld that we will soon rebuild. He saved the entire future we thought we had lost. Desam's voice broke with emotion. The debt is paid. 800 years ago, we saved 2,000 humans. Today, you saved 3,847 Torvallan. The numbers are balanced, the contract fulfilled. She looked directly at the gathered humans. But the friendship is eternal. We are not creditors and debtors anymore. We are family, bound by blood spilled and promises kept. The galaxy will never again make the mistake of thinking humans are weak or that the Torvallan are forgotten. The ceremony ended with the unveiling of a monument that would stand in the center of the rebuilt Torvallan capital. It showed two figures, one human and one Torvallan, reaching out to clasp hands. Above them were inscribed words in both languages. A debt paid, a friendship born, a galaxy changed. Hyejin visited the monument on its opening day. She stood before it, remembering Taman, remembering all they had lost and all they had gained. Jiwan joined her, and together they stood in silence. "Do you think he would be proud?" Jiwan asked. "Of what we accomplished?" "He would complain about the statue," Hyejin said with a sad smile. "He never liked being the center of attention." She paused. "But yes, he would be proud. We kept the promise. We honored the debt." The galaxy continued to change. With access to Torvallan technology and knowledge, humanity advanced rapidly. Medical breakthroughs extended lifespans and cured diseases that had plagued them for centuries. New ship designs allowed them to explore further than ever before. Energy systems provided unlimited clean power to every human world and colony. But more importantly, the relationship between species changed. The old powers could no longer simply dictate terms to younger civilizations. The Galactic Council became a place of genuine dialogue rather than just a stage for the powerful to announce their decisions. Species that had been oppressed found their voices heard for the first time. Humanity established the Debt Remembered Initiative, a program dedicated to helping endangered species and preserving civilizations at risk of extinction. It was run jointly by humans and Torvallan, funded by reparations and donations from across the galaxy. The message was clear. No species would be forgotten or abandoned as long as humanity had the power to help. Minho Choi oversaw the program, working alongside Boram to identify species that needed assistance. They helped relocate populations threatened by environmental disasters, provided technology to civilizations struggling with resource shortages, and mediated disputes between species to prevent conflicts from escalating to war. "This is what the Torvallan taught us," Minho said during one of the program's annual reports. "That the measure of civilization is not in its weapons or its territory, but in how it treats those who cannot defend themselves. We honor their legacy by extending that same kindness to others." Admiral Daeho retired from military service and became an instructor at the academy. He taught young officers about the war, about the cost of conflict and the value of peace. His classes were always full, students eager to learn from the man who had commanded humanity's greatest military victory. "We won the war," he told his students, "but we lost thousands of good people. Every victory came with a price. Remember that when you command ships of your own. Remember that every order you give, every battle you fight, has consequences beyond the immediate tactical situation. We fight when we must, but we seek peace whenever possible." Hyejin Park followed his brother's path and became a captain. He commanded a new ship, also named Eternal Horizon, in honor of Taman's sacrifice. His mission was not war, but exploration, taking human and Torvalin scientists to distant stars in search of knowledge and new discoveries. On the anniversary of the Battle of Sol, Seojin stood on his ship's bridge and recorded a message that was broadcast across all human worlds. My brother believed in keeping promises. He believed that honor meant something, that our word was our bond. He died for those beliefs, and thousands died with him. Seojin paused, gathering his emotions. But they didn't die in vain. The galaxy is different now because of their sacrifice. Species work together instead of dominating each other. The old powers share rather than hoard. And the Torvalin, who were nearly erased from existence, are rebuilding their civilization with the help of friends across the stars. He smiled. Taemin would have liked this galaxy better than the one we grew up in. He would have said it was worth it. The message ended with images of the new galaxy, human and Torvalin children learning together, mixed crews exploring unknown regions, species once enemies, now working side by side on projects that benefited everyone. The debt had been paid in full. But what humanity had gained was worth far more than what they had sacrificed. They had proven themselves to a galaxy that had dismissed them. They had saved a dying species and gained allies who would stand with them forever. Most importantly, they had shown that civilization was measured not by power but by principle, not by strength but by the willingness to fight for what was right. The galaxy would never forget the year humanity went to war for honor. The year they proved that some debts are worth any price, the year they changed everything.